It's been a huge week for marriage equality. Florida became the 36th state with the freedom to marry. Judges in 3 southern states heard oral arguments, and the Supreme Court considered cases from 5 states. Plus, a lawmaker in Texas is wasting everyone's time with a new anti-gay law that would make life difficult for just about everybody. For the American Foundation for Equal Rights, I'm Matt Baum, and welcome to Marriage News Watch for January 12, 2015. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals heard oral argument in several cases last Friday. That includes a crucial case from Louisiana. In September, Judge Martin Feldman upheld the state's marriage ban, one of the only federal judges to rule against gay couples in the last year. Now that couples have appealed that anti-gay ruling, it's looking good for the Fifth Circuit to reverse it. At last Friday's argument before a panel of 3 judges, only one seemed interested in upholding the ban. The other 2 were intensely skeptical. We could have a ruling there any day now, along with a decision in Texas and Mississippi. For the last few weeks, anti-gay groups have been putting forth their best efforts to stop marriage from starting in Florida, but as it turns out, their best efforts just weren't very good. With marriage equality now starting in Florida, we have 36 states with the freedom to marry. That's about 70% of the U.S. population. There's still a couple more lawsuits to work out, but suddenly state attorneys are a lot less eager than they once were about standing in the way of marriage. In fact, last week, the state quietly told a federal court that they don't even plan to file a reply in the lawsuit that legalized marriage last week. Attorney General Pam Bondi hasn't had anything really useful to say in the last couple weeks about marriage, and at this point it seems like the only group that's actively fighting marriage in Florida is the Florida Family Action PAC. That's a fringe group that's filed a few nuisance lawsuits that were almost immediately thrown out of court. But there's still plenty of work to do in Florida. Besides those remaining lawsuits that need to be resolved, the state still needs to bolster its non-discrimination protection, particularly for trans people. It's still illegal to fire someone in Florida for sexual orientation or gender expression. In fact, now that we're close to winning national marriage equality, it's probable that our opponents will start giving up on marriage and instead focus on passing laws that make it easier for them to discriminate. In Indiana, for example, Republican State Senator Scott Schneider may introduce a bill this week that would allow businesses to refuse service to gay couples. And there's an even crazier law under consideration in Texas. It was introduced by Representative Cecil Bell Jr. It would force federal courts to dismiss all marriage cases, and it would exempt Texas from having to follow the U.S. Constitution when it comes to marriage for gay and lesbian couples. So can Texas actually do that? No. Obviously, they cannot. This law will probably never pass, and if by some miracle it actually did, there would be instant lawsuits to overturn it. Bell knows that, and he's only sponsoring this bill because he knows that someone else, taxpayers, will have to shoulder the cost of settling that litigation. If Bell was held personally responsible for the consequences of his own pointless laws, he would probably suddenly be a lot less eager to put them forward. In other news this week, Idaho Governor Butch Otter asked the Supreme Court to take one more look at overturning marriage equality in Idaho. They almost certainly will not. A new survey from the RAND Corporation shows support for marriage equality at an all-time high nationally, 62%, and a judge in Georgia has allowed a marriage equality lawsuit there to move forward. We're likely to have big news from the Supreme Court and also from the Fifth Circuit in the next week, or maybe the week after that. You can subscribe here on YouTube to stay up to date on all those stories. For the American Foundation for Equal Rights, I'm Matt Baum. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.